Okay. In response to a Discord discussion, I decided to do a basic overview of certain, shall we say, basic underlying mechanics of how several aspects of the game work. The basic gist of the discussion was that someone said that their survivalist Jonesy, Love Ranger Jonesy, is a special skin version of him. I don't actually have a standard skin version of survivalist Jonesy, but Love Ranger Jonesy is a survivalist, which you can see here. Tells you there what the class is. So he's got the same skills. And somebody was saying that to them, Love Ranger Jonesy looked better than the current Urban Assault Sledgehammer. Now, again, as you can see here, the class is Urban Assault, and I've got Epic as opposed to Legendary version of the Headhunter in the form of the Urban Assault, in the form of Urban Assault Headhunter, which you'll hear this abbreviated as UAH a lot. So if you hear UAH, what they're really talking about is the Urban Assault class. But Headhunter is the normal way to acquire it. And there's a number of reasons why Survivalist isn't as good as it looks on paper. The first thing, however, I'm going to do is explain a couple of things about how things stack. So for that, I'm going to jump over to my schematics. And I'm going to pull up... which one should I use? I'll use my Dragon's Roar. Right. I'm going to pull up the modified perk so you can see, so I can point to each perk type as I go. The first thing to understand is anything that says it provides plus X% damage, like this, and that, and that, and that, and to go back to the heroes for a second and pull up this and that, they stack additively. What that means is if you've got 24% from that and let me pull up the schematics again, and 30% from that and 10% from that and another 25% from that, it's only going to be 10 plus 25 plus 30 plus 24% bonus. 30, 40, 50, 65, 70, 85, which will be a plus 89% damage. So, in effect, for every point of plus % damage you've got, each additional point is that much less valuable. Now, to be completely fair to Survivalist Jonesy, the plus 24% assault damage that he gets is still a very nice perk. It's still considered one of the better soldier perks. But it's very important to remember this diminishing returns factor. And it's really important for two reasons in relation to soldiers and UAH in particular. The first aspect is debilitating shots. Debilitating shots adds damage vulnerability to the target. 5% per stack, maximum of 3 stacks by default. He doesn't have any bonuses to it, so he can get a maximum of a 15% bonus. But if we jump down to UAH, she gets debilitating shots, lingering pain, which lets it stack up to 5 times for a 25% bonus, and then all the way down here, kneecapper, which increases it to 9% per stack for a 45% bonus. The thing to understand is, because this applies vulnerability instead of bonus damage, it multiplies with other effects. So that 45% is it's basically double the assault damage bonus that survivalists get, that Survivalist Jonesy gets, but because it's not stacking with other sources of damage bonus, including advanced tactics that every soldier gets, because it's not stacking with that, the difference is even larger than that. In practice, that 24% bonus is probably only going to increase your overall damage output by 15 to 20%. This is pulling 45% against anything that can take more than a couple of hits, which is something I'll come on to in a second and explain why that's important. I want to be careful about how I go about this, because I don't want to get people confused. The second thing to understand is that this stance of everything stacks additively applies with everything. There's not a lot of sources of vulnerability, so debilitating shots is almost never stacking with anything else. But there are other sources of magazine size, reload speed, and straight up damage. There's also, although less common, sources of critical rating and critical damage, as well as headshot damage bonuses. What that means is that, as a rule, any bonus effect that is not common, that you do not see a large percentage of the time, is very, very effective at boosting damage output. And that's where the Urban Assault Headhunters, or Urban Assault, or Sledgehammer, basically the Urban Assault class, Make It Rain and Rain Faster abilities come in. You only have to land one headshot out of a whole burst of shots to trigger this. And with both those in play, that's a 50% bonus to rate of fire. And you're very unlikely to have any other sources of bonus rate of fire. As a result, that is very close to a full 50% damage increase. In terms of burst DPS, it is a straight 50% boost in 99% of cases. Because of the need to reload, it's not a straight 50% average boost, but when you factor quick clipping, it closely approaches 50%. What that means between those two bonuses is that if you were to put... Let's take the... I'll go to the collection book to show you it, because I'm using the special Founders version. But if you take something like this Siegebreaker, which is considered one of the best general purpose assault rifles, it's not necessarily the best at any specific thing, but it does quite a lot of things very well. It's a very good balanced rifle, combining good ammo efficiency, good DPS, acceptable mag size, reload, accuracy, dispersion, the whole works. It doesn't really do anything very well, but it doesn't do anything very badly. It's the jack of all trades. If you were to take something like this and run the math on it, it adds 123% the base damage of the weapon to the overall output. That's a massive, massive boost. And nobody else even comes close to that. Well, I say nobody even comes close. First Shot Rio with the right assault rifle can, and oh, which one is it? Let me work through them. It's been a while. No. Oh, I do apologise. I know I've got a copy of the appropriate individual somewhere, but I'm not sure where I've put them. Ah, that was this it? No, it wasn't. I do apologise. Come on, where have I hidden you? I have no idea. I forget which hero it is anyway, but there's a particular hero that has Startup is the name of the skill, and they've got another one called Start Faster. According to White Sushi, who's the real guru for mechanics, that is currently somewhat bugged at the moment, but it's the only other major source of rate of fire skill benefits on soldiers. You can't, some of them like Demolisher do have Make It Rain, but they don't have Rain Faster, and they generally don't have debilitating shots, or not debilitating shots, they generally don't have Lingering Pain or Kneecapper. There's only a handful of the soldiers that have got Kneecapper and Lingering Pain to back up their Deb shots. Now that doesn't mean Urban Assault Headhunter is the only decent soldier. One of the, shall we say, better seen soldiers is Special Forces. This Special Forces Ramirez is a Founder's bonus. You can't get Special Forces Ramirez normally. Special Forces is normally Banshee skin. And what makes her powerful is Warcry. Because, again, a 20% attack speed, sorry, 30% attack speed for ranged weapons, which is basically a 30% rate of fire buff. It does also give a 45% damage buff, which does stack additively. But it's not completely terrible as a bonus. She also gets the very nice 24% assault damage. And that's really what makes her work. It's a combination of Warcry and assault damage coupled with all the skills she's got that benefit Warcry. Practicing combat gives it another 5 seconds of uptime. And leadership knocks it down to a 30-second cooldown, which means it lasts 15 seconds and cools down in 30. So it's got a 50% uptime. That is huge in terms of what it does for both her and for her team, and that's why Special Forces Ramirez can actually be competitive with Urban Assault. It all comes down to the fact that she buffs not only herself but her allies. On its own, Warcry, even with all the bonuses she's got, is not so good that she can eclipse Headhunter in a one-on-one. But she can buff so much of her team by so much that she's generally that much more effective. Now, to come back to Urban Assault Headhunter for a moment, as you can see, she doesn't have Warcry. She can't even get that on a limited basis. She does have Going Commando, but it's not considered a great soldier skill, even with the recent cooldown reduction. And it's especially bad on Urban Assault Headhunter because something like a Siege Breaker will do more damage per shot, and with her Make It Rain bonus, shoots just as fast. So Going Commando is generally going to reduce your DPS, particularly since it doesn't apply debilitating shots or benefit from Make It Rain. Shockwave, I don't have a lot of personal experience with this, but you don't hear a lot about it with Urban Assault because she doesn't have any bonuses to it. It's not a big deal in terms of damage output for her. And then she's got Frag Grenade. Now, to be completely fair, Frag Grenade is considered a nice piece of Urban Assault, sorry. I'll keep calling her Headhunter because for ages I didn't realise myself that Headhunter was the skin and Urban Assault was the class name. And I got into my head the class name was Headhunter. Yeah, I know, I'm stupid. And it just means I keep accidentally calling it by the wrong thing. But like I was saying, Frag Grenade is considered a good part of her kit, but it's considered a good part because of Keep Out. It leaves a 10-second duration AoE on the ground that deals continuous damage to anything passing through, which makes it very, very good at cleaning up lighter husks. But Frag Grenade on its own generally isn't considered particularly good either. This is one of the things you'll find actually with the best soldiers. Their abilities are rarely the... I mean, obviously, Special Forces is an exception, but generally their abilities aren't what make them good. Now, I did say I'd go over some other aspects of Survivalist for you. One of the things you have to understand is, particularly back in Stonewood, where most people get their initial experience, you tend to be a little on the wimpy side, you're easily hurt, and when push comes to shove, you're not facing a lot of things that are hard to kill. To be fair, it doesn't get significantly worse through the first part of Plankerton. But if you've done certain missions, or as is currently when you've done Horde, Bash and Face and Smasher Wave, you'll understand why survival is less relevant than just getting the damage out. The biggest problem that the survivalist has as a class is surviving isn't hard. The only time it gets difficult is if the entire rest of your team is completely useless, because then you're probably going to attract all the aggro from the mobs. But to be fair, at that point you need to be relying on trap tunnels and traps to do a lot of your killing anyway, because once you get high enough you will start routinely seeing attacks come from multiple directions. You can't kill everything that comes at you with a gun. So if you want to solo defend something, you're gonna have to rely on traps. And if you're not solo defending, you're probably not going to draw enough aggro to need the survival skills, particularly if you bring one of the survival orientated gadgets like the healing potion. I forget what it's called, I think it's medkit, but don't quote me on that. So survivalist and no time to bleed, flak vest, they sound good, they genuinely do. So does clean living, but in the end you won't actually get any real use out of most of these things most of the time. Whereas when you're facing something like a Smasher Wave, or even sometimes just really large numbers of basic husks, more than your traps can easily handle, although that takes quite a lot to be fair, it becomes much more important to put the targets down quickly. The best way to survive and the best way to not fail the mission because they punch their way through your walls is to kill everything quickly. And compared to Urban Assault, Survivalist just doesn't do that. Their bonus to assault damage is base and quick clip are basically all they've got. Well, Waste Not Want Not also technically increases DPS by reducing how often you have to reload. But he hasn't got a long list of powerful abilities that improve his damage. And the ones he does have suffer from the additive stacking rule. So he doesn't really get that much of a benefit. Now, I did say that if the team's being a bit useless, you'll suffer in terms of survival. And this brings me on to my other point. Before he mentions, yes, I know he's not a good hero to combine with a Reclaimer, but I don't have a good hero to use with her at the moment. So he's getting dropped in for lack of anything else to put there, because he's nice and high level, which is actually the nice point. Let me just show you what happens here. Watch that health and shield value when I take him away. See how it drops? I'd have to do the math, but I think it's 20% of his health and 20% of his shields gets added to your health and shields. By the same token, if I do an upgrade inspect, well, actually no, I can use see all stats, can't I? Yes, I can. Give me a moment. Here you can see that that's hero build damage 717%. So yes, the display here was accurate. I wasn't sure if that was accurate. If I take that away and I take him away, you can see it's dropped. Again, they add, and I know in this case it's 20%, they add 20% of their hero ability damage modifier to your primary hero. Again, in Plankerton and in Stonewood and Lower Plankerton, you're probably not going to have well-leveled heroes to put here. But eventually you are, and as you get better heroes here, you pick up a lot more health and shields that way, in addition to your resistance and fortitude. So, again, survival becomes less relevant than just dealing the damage. And as I say, that's the real secret to Urban Assault. When it comes right down to it, it's all down to the fact that that her rate of fire boost and her Deb shots modifiers don't suffer from the additive problems anywhere near as much, because there's very few other sources of those things for them to stack additively with. So they're nearly a direct full bore boost to DPS. One of the few other good soldiers, and I'll go through him as another example of a good soldier for you, is Raider. Raider Raptor is the... I do apologise about any noise you just get in there. Itchy nose, I had to scratch it. Raider Raptor is the collection book reward. He's not considered quite on par with Urban Assault, but he's still considered a very strong hero. And that comes really down to just how much he boosts shotguns. The thing is, I mean, he's got some relatively so-so bonuses. I mean, Shell Shock is nice, but like all damage bonuses, it stacks additively. On the other hand, it's not a terrible bonus. It's still nice to have. Survivalist is a bit pointless, but that's sort of one of the reasons he's not managing to be top tier. He's got a couple of bad perks. Perfect Engineering. It might not look that nice to apply 3 stacks of debilitating shots to all enemies hit by Shockwave, but the thing is, because he's going to be using a shotgun, he's going to be quite close to the enemy a lot of the time, and Shockwave is a great way. First, it's a great get out of jail free card in those situations. Urban Assault doesn't need to run up into the enemy's face to kill them, so you can use a rifle from mid-range. Raider does, so Shockwave gains a bit strength with him because he's going to be in a position to use it much more. Equally, I do apologise. Equally, that means he's going to get to apply a lot of free debilitating shots on a mass scale. That's something Urban Assault can't do. They can only apply it to whatever they're shooting. He can apply it to stuff around him. I love to reload. It increases his movement speed. It lets him get in the enemy's faces. Shotguns, as a rule, have very, very high raw damage throughput, but their limited range generally means they're actually inferior weaponry for the most part. Shotguns are not generally well regarded, but when you've got a 30% movement speed bonus every time he reloads, and shotguns reload a shell at a time, meaning you can activate it pretty much any time you want, you've got a good situation. Critical Blast. There are plenty of sources of critical damage, and Critical Blast stacks additively with them. But it's very much like Shell Shock or Assault Damage. It's not amazing, but it's nice to have. Especially when you remember that if you can get another Raider, which you can get from the birthday llamas that are available at the moment, you can get an additional 24 critical rating. Because he's only 1 star, it's only 8. If he was 3, if he was 2 star, it would be 16. If he was 3, it would be 24. As I was saying, so that tends to make it very easy for him to trigger that. I mean, thanks to the nature of critical rating these days compared to the old crit chance, it's not as effective as it used to be. That's definitely hurt the Raider somewhat, but he's still pretty strong. He's got Warcry, which he doesn't have the cooldown reductions and the duration buffs to make this truly amazing, but he can and he does have it enough to give him some burst potential when he needs it. And he's got Kneecapper, which gives him a 27% bonus Deb shots effect. Flak Vest, it's one I've never had the opportunity to use, but I've never heard it mentioned in a positive light. It's nice to have, but it's not amazing, just like Survivalist. The thing is, he's basically able to, he's got the skills he needs to get into a position to use shotguns effectively, and then just enough buffs to shotguns to build on their inherent advantages in terms of raw damage output to let him actually keep pace with Urban Assault Headhunter. I mean, in theory, if you take an Urban Assault Headhunter and give her a shotgun and put her in a position where she can get herself in the right position to use a shotgun, she'll outdamage even Raider. But she's got a harder time getting into the right place in the first place. There are a number of other heroes that are considered quite good as well amongst the soldiers. Soldiers, as a rule, tend to be seen very strongly, and for all that I ragged on Survivalist, he's still better than a heck of a lot of the ninjas, outlanders and constructors. That's just the nature of soldiers. So much of the later stages of the game are about putting raw amounts of damage downrange to survive, that anything that helps with that is very valuable. It's just that by the standards of the rest of the soldiers, he's actually quite poor. I'm trying to think which other ones I've got that are considered very good. I don't think I've actually got any of the other really amazing ones. But I can pull one up in the collection book to show you. Master Grenadier. Master Grenadier is all about the frag grenade. I mean, she does have the usual deb shots, the usual advanced tactics, but that's not really what makes her special. The first and obvious benefit she gets is grenade damage. Rucksack might look good, but you're always going to be limited by the 25-second regen time in practice, so it doesn't really matter. It's never really going to have much of an effect. 25% grenade damage, on the other hand, is useful. Not so much for the initial damage. You'll have a lot of problems hitting large numbers of enemies with a single grenade. Pull the pin lets you spam them faster. Bigger is better gives you a bigger blast radius, which makes it easier to hit things. But again, you're still going to be limited to how much you're going to knock out with a single grenade in a single toss. Survivalist is Survivalist, I've covered that. Cluster Bomb is nice because it effectively increases the AoE further by releasing small cluster bombs. And then she's got Keep Out, which benefits from all the damage bonuses to deal massive amounts of damage over time. And that's really why she works. She basically just works off spamming large radius grenades that leave devastatingly dangerous energy fields lying on the floor. She's basically just a mass AoE monster, but she's always going to be limited by the fact that she can only drop a grenade every 25 seconds. That's her big limit. She's amazing in what she does, but that's all she can do, and that's the reason she doesn't really hold up with Urban Assault. Urban Assault is powerful because it takes your basic weapon damage and just shoves it sky high. Whereas Master Grenadier is more about the abilities, and ability-focused heroes tend to suffer from the fact that they can only be effective as long as the ability's up. Their effectiveness tends to just fall through the floor the moment the ability ends. Anyway, I've gone on for a very long time with this, and I do apologise, and hopefully the mechanics discussion earlier helped.